Okay, everybody. Hey, we're in a secret location in Westchester here, and we're with
Mike Lorenzo?
Mike Lorenzo. Mike, so you were a former YPD, no?
Correct, detective.
And so we're here today to speak to Mike. He was gracious enough to give us some time because his dad worked, your dad works on a SAM, right?
On a SAM case, Berkowitz case, yeah.
So-
Peripherally, he wasn't assigned to a task force. When New York never included Yonkers in their task force, which they probably should have.
They should have. And so your dad was Yonkers detective.
Right.
And so the reason why we wanted to speak to Mike today was because his dad was quoted in an article about the bombings at the, about the incidents at the Carr house. And in that article, he said that the fire bombings never happened. He was speaking to Nan Casara, so I was very interested in that. I called Mike to confirm it, and he had some stories to tell me that were contradictory to that, so we wanted to get him on record today. So thanks, Mike. So what do you got for us?
Well, with regard to Casares, like I explained to you, my dad would have never shared information on a pending investigation with a civilian, even if they had an arbitrary
Connection
complaint,
to the...
because obviously their complaint was based in New Rochelle.
Right.
So it wasn't started by Yonkers PD. They were victimized, or the weird incident happened in New Rochelle, and then New Rochelle obviously contacted Yonkers.
Right.
When they put it together with the Sam Carr letters. But my father would have never offered any ongoing information to another witness, because that could potentially give people false hope or also spread misinformation. But my father, and they took it serious from the get-go about this Berkowitz, and I know that for a fact. Him and his partner Eddie Oakley, they were assigned to investigate incidents in Yonkers regarding Berkowitz.
Regarding Berkowitz specifically?
Specifically.
And
yeah.
by name?
Yes. And they actually went up and did their own surveillance because they didn't have enough for a warrant.
Really?
But yes, and they knocked on doors. They want to get a feel, but because he didn't really have a lot of Yonkers roots at the time, a lot of people would just know him in passing through the building.
Right, especially
they wouldn't
since...
have intimate kind of relations with him. I guess he worked off hours, and that's a working building, so it's an apartment building. People would go to work.
Right, he would work from 12 to 8 in the morning.
It was like he was a homeowner, and you see him mowing his lawn, and you strike a conversation.
He was a night worker and slept during the day.
Right, so people really didn't have any information on him.
But why did your dad first start hearing about Berkowitz in Yonkers?
Well, they got two officers who actually I know them both. Chris Wagaki, who ended up being K9, and then Hoyt Rogers, he's also alive. He's still around.
Oh, okay.
He actually hangs out in Gianna's, so ask about him there.
I'll be there in a minute.
Hoyt is known there. I've seen him eating there. Hoyt.
Okay.
Yeah. They got a call on April 27th, 1977.
Now, what are you reading from here?
These are what
can I see them?
These are what they used to call, I believe they were DD9s. They called these small reports before we UF 39s.
And these are from Yonkers.
These are from Yonkers. These are what before we had reports. By the time I got on the job, these were gone. We actually had a long form report.
Okay.
But this is what a patrolman would take on any incident, and I'll just read it. RC 172, which is radio car 172, sent to above location.
What was that location?
316 Warburton Avenue. Regarding a shot dog. Upon arrival, spoke to Sam Carr, white male, stated he heard 3 gunshots coming from the Aqueduct. The Aqueduct is the one that runs behind his property. Upon his investigation, he found his black Labrador Retriever had been shot 2 times in the right rear hind leg. He also observed an unknown male wearing a blue denim jacket and dungarees, carrying a rifle and running north on the Aqueduct.
This is interesting because in The Ultimate Evil, they say the guy had long, stringy blonde hair.
I'm going to get to that. A sign checked area of Aqueduct and surrounding location, and was informed by a passerby who was walking his dog but refused to get involved. Looking back, probably would have been better if he did get involved, right?
Yeah.
Who stated he saw a white male with blonde hair, approximately 6 foot, approximately 18 years of age, carrying a rifle, run south on the Aqueduct from Phillipsy Place. Assigned checked area to no avail. Carr also related to assigned. He had received many threats in the past. DD notified. That's when my dad would have been notified.
Okay, so now this is highly interesting. So this confirms the story in The Ultimate Evil is true, that it was a blonde, stringy, 6 foot,
18 years old.
18 years old. So Mike, in your professional opinion, could that have been Berkowitz?
Let me ask you a different opinion that might blow your mind.
Okay.
Could the unknown male who didn't want to get involved been Berkowitz walking the dog?
Oh my God, I never thought of that.
Right? If you're on the set, that's happened many times to me. You go to a set, me in a crime scene, and the guy wants to offer up information. A lot of times the guy will linger around. He might not have time to leave. It'd be very easy to get you that 22, which I imagine it was a small gun.
Right.
That's what he's like with the Greg Glassman 22. Just because he was caught with a 44, he obviously had
multiple guns.
Multiple guns or access to other guns.
Right.
And to shoot a dog, if he shot that dog with a 30-30 or a larger caliber rifle, that dog's hindquarters would have been blown off. Period. No doubt about it. Or a shotgun, that dog would be dead. So it had to have been a 22. I don't know if any ballistics were ever done on it, if there were any shell casings taken on it.
Right.
Everything in hindsight, even though looking back on it, we can all play Monday morning quarterback. But in a case like this, they wouldn't be calling out all the evidence text looking for shell casings.
For a dog being shot.
Right. But if it was, maybe they were there. Maybe there were shell casings there.
Right.
But because it was kind of a low priority call, so to speak, maybe things were missed. I'm not saying they were. These two cops were excellent.
Right.
Excellent cops. But I just know, as far as I'm recording, if I'm going there on a murder, number one, I'm going to be securing that crime scene from one end of the aqueduct to the other. But on a dog shot, I'm not.
You're not.
I'm going to go. I'm going to take the report. I'm going to look around, which I'm sure they did, for any evidence. There's no doubt about it. Especially, I know Chris and Hoyt, exceptionally well-regarded, well-respected cops. And probably knew the sector inside and out. So the thing about Berkowitz walking away, I think that they would have picked up on a vibe from him. So maybe it was just some elderly guy. I don't know.
But that is an interesting question. What if, so you're saying that the possibility exists that they could have actually spoke to Berkowitz on the trail.
You never know.
He stashed his gun somewhere else.
You'd have to ask Chris. I'm just saying it's always a possibility.
Right.
On crime scenes that if somebody can't get away, they're going to obviously give you false information to
that's
say something.
Highly interesting because we never, Neo, we never thought of that ever in our lives. Everybody in Son of Sam land has been thinking that was possible. That was most likely true.
Now, if you had
blonde hair and 6 feet.
See, if you had.
Can we get copies of these?
Yeah, the one question I would have had is, okay, say on the hair, age, height. What about the clothing? Because Carr says dungarees, but he doesn't give any much further. Just unknown male wearing a blue denim jacket and dungarees, carrying a rifle, running north on the aqueduct. Okay, north on the aqueduct would be leading from that area to Glenwood. Okay?
Right.
This guy says the person who didn't want to get involved, he saw a white male with blonde hair, approximately 6 feet, carrying a rifle, run south on the aqueduct from Phillipsley Place. That's contradictory to what Sam, who was the victim, saw. He saw the guy running north on the aqueduct toward Glenwood.
Towards Glenwood.
If he's running...
Glenwood what? Glenwood Avenue?
Yes. If you continue...
Glenwood.
Yes. If you continue north on the aqueduct, it goes all the way to Albany. So I'm just saying the next street that I would know of, major thoroughfare, would be Glenwood.
Right, okay.
He's saying
Glenwood, right.
The unknown or the unidentified witness says he was running south. That's contradictory to what the
So in
victim
other
said.
words, what you're saying is then the unknown eyewitness most likely was, one of these two people was lying.
Right, and what would be Sam Carr's motivational lie? He's the victim.
So in other words,
Correct?
we can't, correct. So in other words, we can't put much credence into this whole 6 foot.
Again, this guy, he said the blonde hair, approximately 6 feet, running with the rifle. So the guy who didn't want to get involved, he actually saw a rifle, right?
Right. So why?
So he saw Carr also says he saw a guy with a rifle, but he's putting him running northbound.
Right. This guy's
Okay,
putting him running.
this guy is saying he's carrying a rifle. Also, he also that's the same. No clothing description, but now it's the opposite way, southbound.
But how does
That's
the guy...
contradictory to what Carr says.
Right, and what I'm thinking now is that this unknown person who said they saw a rifle, maybe that was Berkowitz because he knew the person had a rifle.
Chris.
All right,
Chris or Hoyt, you know, I'm sure that...
Wow, my mind's racing right
this kid, you got to remember something. When we take a report, we're putting down it, but we're also... It's not a novel.
Right.
We're condensing, especially with these guys. They have limited paperwork to deal with.
Right.
And again, it's not a homicide where you're going to be, you know that this case is going to go to court. Every single word that you write down is going to be torn apart. It's going to be going over. You want to get you might even do a scratch copy. You know what I mean? This is kind of off the cuff. Went there, spoke to Carr, boom, boom, boom. This is what he said. Now this guy, in my opinion, this is contradictory.
Right.
And the fact that I don't know. Yes, you have to track down Hoyt and you have to talk to Chris.
We will. And you know what's so ironic about this is that 45 years later, we're sitting here pulling this apart and trying to analyze it, and this thing from the dog shooting has emerged as something extremely important.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. The thing with Carr. Now, this is what I remember as a kid. I'm fortunate that I grew up in the neighborhood, so I'm kind of familiar with that area. And we used to F around down on the aqueduct here and there, is that most of the yards that back into the aqueduct, they usually have heavy shrubbery because they don't want every mope walking by just throwing their garbage over there,
right,
or peeking in their windows. So even today, I bet you if you walk the aqueduct, most homes that abut the aqueduct has some kind of either fencing or heavy shrubbery or tree lines. Because I remember that even as a kid, because in the 70s it was filthy. It was full of garbage everywhere, and every street and every freaking park was full of garbage. We weren't that environmentally sound, so a lot of people would have done that. And if I lived there, I know I would want to do that. I wouldn't want people just arbitrarily being able to look into my backyard. So anyway, continuing.
Wait, but was there an ultimate point about this whole shrubbery thing, and like where were you going?
No,
with
my
that?
point was because how was Carr's vision? Maybe he could only see the denim jacket.
Right.
Maybe he couldn't make a face because, especially if you're running, right? It's hard to, oh yeah, he had, a longish nose or earring, it would be very quick.
Yeah, Carr presumably would be down by the house.
Now this guy, if he's on the aqueduct, he's not looking, he's looking unabated. He's on the aqueduct.
Right.
So if I'm approaching you on the aqueduct, obviously I have a clearer version. I don't know what the shrubbery or what the landscape was from the Carr house at that time in 77 to the thing. He might have had a clear, but I think he would have given more than just dungarees.
Right. But you know what's interesting is that dungarees and a blue denim jacket is exactly what they say Berkowitz was wearing the night of the Moskowitz shooting. Now, I'm wearing a blue denim jacket.
That was the style back then, yeah.
Right. So it doesn't necessarily mean anything.
No, it doesn't mean. The blonde hair, and also one thing I do know is just say this guy was an old timer, the unidentified male. Who knows?
Right.
Again, a lot of these people in that area, like I told you before, Yonkers has changed, but even when I was a kid, I'm going to be honest with you, it was known as a rough area. Not Pine Street. It's so weird because in Yonkers, you could be on one block and be fine, and literally another block, you would not go near it.
Right.
So even in the 70s, my ass would not be down on Warburton Avenue, even at 12. But I had friends on Glenwood. I had friends who lived there. I went to high school with people who lived right across the street from Pine Street.
Right.
They were normal, regular, cool people who had nice homes. Their parents had decent jobs. Their kids went to Catholic school.
On another unrelated note, did you ever hear of Andrew Dupay, the mailman who killed himself?
No.
Okay. Because he delivered mail to that area, killed himself a month after the arrest of Berkowitz. We're having his daughter on this Monday.
Okay.
So we're going to get more
I'm
information
not familiar
about
with that name, no.
Okay. So let's carry on. So that's highly, I mean, to me, I don't know about you, Neo, but this is huge.
Let me,
Everything's huge.
Oh my God. Right. Neo, you want to be part of this in question?
Well, we do have him with
well,
the wig.
I'm going to go down now to this is apparently Baker and Kennedy did this report. Hold on. Let me just get the dates correct.
Okay.
Okay. I don't know if my father started this report, but this was in his files. April 21st, 1977.
So wait.
This job.
So this was before the arrest.
This is before this. This incident is April 27th of the man who shot
The
Carr's dog. April 27th, just to put chronologically. This is a report, a detective report, on April 21st, 1977. Now, I don't know if it was my father prepared it. No. Detective R. Baker, who I think might be, he might be deceased. There was a bunch of Bakers on the job, and I think he is. And Billy Kennedy, who I remember, both great cops, great detectives, friends of my dad. But they got this report. The assignment sent by Detective Giannico to investigate a report of threatening letters to Sam Carr, 316 Warburton Avenue. Giannico was probably a New Rochelle detective because that name doesn't ring a bell with me.
Okay.
And this is what another agency would do. The Casares got this letter. What the hell is this? God, this is weird. Oh, maybe that weirdo Berkowitz. And the return address is the Carr. You know the story.
Yeah.
So they met up with the Carrs, and then they contacted New Rochelle because their crime or the harassment or the weirdness originated in New Rochelle.
New Rochelle.
So normally what happens, New Rochelle cop would go, but now they say, well, we got to let Yonkers know about this too. So that's probably what happened. Unfortunately, I think Baker and Kennedy have both passed away. But upon arrival, spoke to the daughter, Wheat Carr, white female, 26 years old, who stated that on April 11th, she had received a letter from an anonymous person stating that this person was starting a file. I think this is misspelling. Starting a file is probably starting to file legal papers against the complainant to have one of his dogs removed from the property as is a public nuisance, and then goes on 2 pages complaining of the dog barking and annoying persons. Complainant's daughter, Miss Carr, so the complainant in this case would be Samuel Carr. Complainant's daughter, Miss Carr, who's Wheat Carr, received another letter signed A Citizen on April 20th. Also, majority of the letter complaining about the dogs that Mr. Carr has and about their barking. This unknown person wrote, "My life is destroyed now. I have nothing to lose anymore. I can see that there shall be no peace in my life or my family's life until I end yours." Said letter is dated April 19th, 1977, which is interesting considering the shooting is
April 27th. Right, so it's all happening.
Things are picking up. Yeah, his mind is starting to go. The assigned checking the envelope postmarked April 11th, 1977, written to Mr. Samuel Carr, 316 Warburton Avenue, Yonkers, New York. Return address, Modern Shipping Service, Inc., 345 Hudson Street, New York, New York. That's in Tribeca. I know that area well.
Why would he? Anyway, all right.
Okay, said letter postmarked in Westchester, New York, 105, which is 107, 105. And me doing a little background check, where Berkowitz lived is my zip code where I grew up, 10703. 10705 is Southeast Yonkers. I don't know what post office he worked for. Where did he work?
He apparently worked in the Bronx.
Okay, 10705 is by Tibbetts, that area over there.
Right, by Van Cortlandt.
So that he was smart. He was not that nutty enough. He would know through the post office that he'd have to postmark it at a different post office. There was a post office on Lake Avenue when I was a kid. You could drop your mail off at. That's where we dropped our mail when I was a kid.
Right.
And that would have been the closest post office to him, would have one in Getty Square, which is 10701 or 10702. So he purposely had this postmarked over there. That shows thought and planning. 10705 is nowhere near where he lives.
Right.
Okay.
So another thing we never knew.
I just want to make a point. That's 10705. That's Southeast Yonkers. He lived in Northwest Yonkers. It's not next door. It's not like driving down to Getty Square. You have to go completely on the other side of the city. All right, and checking the second letter dated April 20th, 1977, this is really interesting to me. Written in the rear flap, HH.
Right, HH, we
What
heard
is that?
about that. Well, it could be, Maury Terry
Heil
is Heil Hitler.
Yeah,
Right.
HH. This is the thing I've been holding off, but I'm going to It's going to blow your mind. I'll get to it. No, it's nothing funny because it's going to scare the shit out of you. Yonkers, New York. Also mailed from 10705. The assigned is speaking with Miss Weekars. She stated that she had a firebomb thrown in her place on October 9th, 1976. I'm going to give you the CNR numbers on that. That means that there was a report on it. I don't have that report with me, but if they exist, they can be tracked down. October 9th, 1976. CNR 59498, DD number 5638N. So if that incident occurred, which would have been an arson, that's why it'd be a detective assigned to it. If that thing exists, it should be able to be tracked down. Okay. This is April 21st, same detectives. Data report April 22nd. So this is a follow-up.
Okay.
The assigned continued investigation into the threatening letters to Samuel Carr, 316 Warburton Avenue, contacted Modern Shipping, Inc. at 345 Hudson Street. The assigned spoke to Mr. O'Shea of the Modern Shipping Services. They requested a check of any employee with the initials HH. This is just touching base.
Right.
At this time, Mr. O'Shea informed the assigned that there was no one working in that company with the initials HH. Okay. The reason I bring up the HH thing to you is there's something that my dad wouldn't have known.
Would have known or wouldn't have known?
Wouldn't have known, I don't know. I really would have loved to have known about this. This is the thing that, I don't know if it's ever been brought up. It may have been in Maury's book, I forget. Now this is my dad's report, a supplementary. This is prepared June 10th, 1977.
Okay.
Again, the complaint is Samuel Carr. My father, I guess, was assigned to do some background check on Berkowitz. Again, this was a person of interest. At this time, in my opinion, and from what my father told me when Berkowitz was finally collared, when we were up, like I told you before, we were on vacation in Adirondacks, as soon as the word came down, my father, I'll never forget it to this day, he said, "We fucking knew it was him." So he was on their radar, and I know it's been told in documentaries before, and I don't know if it's in Terry's book, but Yonkers was calling down and letting these guys know. But their opinion was, Yonkers, too big.
Right.
You understand? Which is a problem in all agencies. Now it's a lot better. Now there's a lot more things. But even within departments and even within precincts and even within squad cars, there's a weirdness about cops. They want to make the collar.
Right.
A lot of that's been broken down now. Now guys realize the big picture is to get the bad guy.
Yeah.
But there's always that ego thing. That's why if you ask any veteran cops, we didn't even like working jointly with FBI. We always figured they're going to snake us on a collar, which they did. Or another agency. If the guy's hitting the Bronx, Yonkers, Manhattan North, Mount Vernon, we want to get the guy. There's an ego part to it. Right. And I'm guilty of it too. I want the collar. So anyway, I don't know if that happened, but the thing that I'm telling you that's bugged out is that he applied for a job. And at one time he said that he was a guard at Neptune.
He was a guard, wait.
At Neptune in New Rochelle.
But Berkowitz applied for a job and said he worked at Neptune.
Which Patrick Cowan, the Nazi.
Fred Cowan.
Fred Cowan, the Nazi, in 76, shot that place, shot cops, killed 7 people. Was what?
A neo-Nazi.
Neo-Nazi. There was rumors that he was into sadomasochism, gay, possibly pedophile.
He looked like all of the
above. And like I told you about the thing about, how would a guy like this, and has anybody ever asked, how did a kid from Co-op City end up in New Rochelle? This isn't Craigslist time.
Yes. That's what we're
trying to figure out. And the thing is with
out.
Patrick Cowan, New Rochelle.
Fred Cowan.
Fred Cowan to New Rochelle. Again, it's not Craigslist. I could see Pelham because he was from the East Bronx. And it's not that, I'm not trying to read more into it, but is that question ever been asked? And especially, it wasn't an apartment building. If you went to a realtor and say, hey, I'm a young guy, I'm looking for an apartment. Oh, well, you know. So, but to get into a private house.
Right.
Like, would you, like, if I had a tenant in a private house, you kind of have to have an inn.
Yeah.
Where would they put that? Would they put that, looking for a tenant in the deli?
And then why would he see it?
How could he see it?
Right.
How did he find out about that apartment? Has anybody ever asked that or uncovered that?
Well, the speculation was through Cowan.
That's what I'm thinking.
Because Cassara worked at Neptune. Cassara owned the house. Cowan worked at Neptune. And now you're saying that Berkowitz, is that in here in the writing?
Let me find. Yes, Berkowitz has filed for this is my dad's background.
Hold on. I'm going to get that. I mean, we're going to get copies of these, but where is that? Where does it say Neptune?
No, I'm going to get to that.
Okay.
This is the page one. Berkowitz has filed for a pistol permit, and also a check of county records revealed that no David Berkowitz of the New Rochelle or Pine Street addresses holds a pistol permit. Assigned to attempt to get a handwriting specimen of David Berkowitz from either Pine Street Associates or company that he worked for. David Dial of the FBI office, New Rochelle, notified by Mr. Carr of the threatening letters. Investigation to continue.
So the FBI knew about this as well. What's the date on that again?
6/10/77.
So this is 2 months before the arrest.
Yeah.
They could have stopped Moskowitz. They could have stopped. Well, at least they could have stopped Moskowitz.
Okay, I'm going to...
But Maury speculated in The Ultimate Evil that Fred Cowan was the connect, and now this HH thing. Yeah, and he talked about that too, HH.
He signed this date, blah, 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 met with complainant to DD, Samuel Carr. So this means Samuel Carr actually came to the detective division. Relative to new information on letters that he had received on April 10th and 19th complaining about his dogs barking on his property. It refers back to those jobs that Chris and Hoyt wrote. Mm-hmm. Complainant's dog was shot on April 27, 1977. Again, that referring back to Chris and Hoyt's job. Mr. Carr stated that he was contacted by Mr. Jack Cassara, 174 Coligny Avenue, New Rochelle, relative to a Get Well card with the return address of Mr. and Mrs. Samuel Carr, 316 Warburton. The letter in essence stated, would you like me to read it?
Sure.
Okay. I'm sorry to hear about that fall you took from the roof of your house. Just want to say I'm sorry, but I'm sure it won't be long until you feel much better, happy, well, and strong. Please be careful next time, since if you are going to be confined for a long time, let us know if Nan needs anything. Sincerely, Sam and Francis. Mr. Carr stated to Mrs. Cassara that he does not know her, and he arranged a meeting on the night of June 9, 1977 to compare handwriting on envelope with letters received by Mr. Carr. It should be noted that the writing and the return address appears to be the same type that was in the threatening letters of these reports. That's my father's notation. That's him saying that.
So there's no doubt that your dad then told Nan Cassara just it never happened.
I don't know what he told her.
It says
he was a veteran detective,
right?
And me as a veteran detective, even though I could be diligently working on your case, I can't share information regarding
that. So that explains that.
Another thing.
Okay.
And there's no way he blew it off. To understand, he wasn't assigned a task force. And I'm sure there was tons of Mike Lorenzos out there and tons of other jurisdictions being notified by concerned citizens and other people, hey, I got this nut here, I got this nut here. That doesn't mean they were part of the official Son of Sam investigation, but they were chasing down leads like I'm sure every department was doing.
Just from your dad's extensive notes.
But my father, and I talked to my friend Marvin, whose dad was my father's partner at the time, they took it seriously.
It sounds like
some other people didn't, but they said this guy could be the guy. It kind of makes sense, especially with the Sam Carr, the son of Sam.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So Berkowitz's name was going around Yonkers as Son of Sam amongst veteran high-end detectives as early as what?
Well, we don't know how much. That's the thing. The problem is with my dad, and which my own problem is. I should ask him, were you getting support from the higher up, or were they just like, I'm not giving you overtime to chase this lead?
Right.
Could be any nut.
Right.
Could be any guy named Sam. I don't, because and every cop who has worked his salt has encountered that.
Right.
Where the higher ups like, how do you know? What do we? It's not our case. We'll help out, but we don't know. You understand?
Yeah.
So. And we had no victims in Yonkers. We had no murder victims in Yonkers. You understand? That changes everything.
Right.
Because it could have been nothing, but it did turn out that he was the bad guy. Like I said, I guarantee you, if you go to any jurisdiction on Long Island, all the way up to Connecticut, Jersey, anything, I guarantee every small department in 1977 was chasing down leads on the local fucking
weirdo.
Nut.
Right.
Weirdo. Right. There's no doubt about it.
So this is a classic case of hindsight being 20/20.
Right. Okay. All right. It should be noted that the writing Mrs. Cassara stated that she had a tenant in January and February 76 whose name was David R. Berkowitz, M.W., male white, approximately 20 to 22 years of age, and the man did not seem to be in a proper mental state and left her home after living there for approximately 1 month as a tenant. So right now, she's telling my old man he's a nut.
1 month.
1 month.
You
Yeah.
got 3. That's, she just said 1 on that report.
Yeah, and she's telling me that he lived there for approximately 1 month as a tenant, and he was not in a mental state. That would another set of alarm off for my old man. That's why he would say, we got to look at this.
Right. Did you tell?
Should I continue?
Well, real quick, do you want to? I mean, I'll edit this out if I have to. So just answer honestly. Do you want to talk about your conversation with?
So he's doing great. Yeah, sure.
We spoke to Cassara's son.
Okay.
What did he say?
He was scared. He didn't want to...
Come closer so you're
he
picked
was
up on the
scared.
mic.
He didn't want to talk. You know, he was afraid that other people were involved. He was scared.
But what did he say about Berkowitz?
I asked him, how was Berkowitz when he got here? Was he normal, or while he was here, he just went nuts by the end? And he said, he was kind of normal. He had a job. He was okay, I guess. He just kept complaining about my dogs. And, I got into a fight with him, he said, the son. He was nosed up with him, he said, they didn't get along. And you're saying 1 month now. That's.
Yeah. So, and Nan Cassara is saying something we never heard before, which was they thought he was a mental case.
Yeah. When I talked to Stephen, he kind of made me feel like he was normal going in there and whatever happened.
You never know, your tenant. I mean, I'm a landlord.
Well, 1 month, you're not going to know either, really,
Yeah.
shit.
All right. So carry on, Mike. Sorry about
This
that.
is the oh shit part.
Okay. Yeah, we like oh shit parts.
It should be, this is my dad now. This is him talking, or his investigation. It should be noted that a David R. Berkowitz also lives at 35 Pine Street in Yonkers, New York, date of birth 6/1/53, who might possibly be the same man that lived with the Cassaras and might have been responsible for writing letters to both Mrs. Cassara and Mr. Carr. What he's writing might have, because again, he's writing as a detective. That's why I'm telling you the difference. With no absolutes until it's confirmed.
Okay.
Always. Because it could be used, this is Rosario material. And the defense attorney says, you already thought it was him. You said it was him.
Okay.
That's why you say might, alleged. You understand?
Right.
Even when you read that in reports today. Why do they say it alleged? Because everything is being documented, and a sharp defense attorney says, well, it seems like you already made up your mind that he was my guy.
Right.
But when you say might, but in the truth, he fucking knows it.
Right.
Understand? That's the difference between a report and reality. Okay, a sign learned from Mr. Carr that Berkowitz supposedly attempted to work as a guard at Neptune stores in New Rochelle.
Oh my
I'll read that again. A sign, meaning my dad, learned from Mr. Carr that Berkowitz supposedly attempted to work as a guard at Neptune stores in New Rochelle, but Mr. Carr does not know if he is still employed. How did
he know that?
How would Sam Carr know that?
That's what's going to be my question.
He had no communication with this guy. How did he know that?
I think that's $1 million
He would know
question.
that from his son. Correct?
Maybe he was just
How would he
trying
know
to pin
that?
him to
Or
another
he was
file.
handling Berkowitz in some way.
I don't know.
I mean, I was thinking the same thing. How the F would he know that?
He believed that man, Berkowitz, not named, but he believed that man had possibly a pistol permit and might be responsible for his dog shooting. Again, my question is investigator. How would he think that he had a pistol permit?
He would have had to have found that out maybe.
But how would he think that?
Yeah. How?
It's not rational. It's not a rational saying.
And what does it tell you as a veteran detective? What's your spidey sense?
But Sam Carr was an oddball. I'll tell you right. No defamation. Because I had dealings with him as a patrolman. He was still alive and well, and got into a racial incident on Warburton Avenue that me and my partner were like, this guy's a freaking bird when we were young
Right.
cops. So
Right.
I personally had dealings with him. He believed that man had possibly a pistol permit, might be responsible for his dog shooting.
You seem to know a lot about this guy.
A signed check with Detective Benjamin and learned that no David It was copied wrong. Had filed for a pistol permit, and that's what, going back to
So in
the
other
first
words, he
narrative.
never filed for a pistol permit,
No.
but Sam Carr thinks he does. He'd had.
My dad, in the threatening letters dated June 10th, regarding the same thing, he assigned my dad, this date went to DHI Management Corp., 984 North Broadway, and thereat obtained a copy of the lease application for David Berkowitz of apartment 7E. Copies attached to this report for later examination by a handwriting expert. Again, you would not, if you didn't think it was the guy, they would not allocate funds to do it. Understand? If you didn't think it was the guy, you would not
wouldn't
contact
get a handwriting
the
expert, right?
So the whole thing that Yonkers didn't know or didn't care or poo-pooed it is absolute nonsense. And like I told you before, that bothered my father because he was a serviceman. He was a good man. He grew up in the streets of Yonkers. He was a dedicated cop, and he would never slack off on anything, especially people being women being killed or any type of job. And any cop that you talk to who worked my own man will tell you the same thing.
Right, and I'm really glad that we reached out to you because until now I thought for the impression I had was his dad poo-pooed the whole thing and
No, and that's why my old man hated Geraldo because he would say, I guess Moskowitz was down. And again, like I told you, I have empathy for the victims' families. And a lot of times you do lash out at people, including me. Like if you're a victim of a crime, so you're angry, and never mind a murder.
Right.
So you lash out and you think that everybody's not doing their fair share. So I would never, including on cases of mine, I'm sure there's somebody out there, so he didn't. I know he didn't care about this, so he was stupid, he couldn't solve it.
Right.
Nobody hurts more than a real professional cop when they can't solve a case. It eats at us,
Right.
It really do. We want to, even for our own ego, that
Right.
somebody got over on us, you know what I mean? So it's never that. But I can understand it. But my father always, he was mad because Geraldo, even back then, was on news because it dominated the news. And he was shitting on the Yonkers PD, and my father was like, I hate that guy,
Yeah.
And because Moskowitz's mother, who knows where they were getting information, and probably getting it from. Again, these are grieving parents. If they called you every name in the book, you would take it and not hold anything against them.
Right.
But it's when journalists twist it and they try to, poo-poo it or say, oh, these guys, they were joke. They didn't care. No, they did care. Like I said, I guarantee you, every freaking department within 100 miles of New York City were chasing down leads. And because, yes, they were concentrated in New York City, but everybody was concerned. Even as a 12-year-old kid, it completely dominated everything. And that's just in New York.
Right.
So there's no doubt in my mind, those guys who worked the task force, I never watched the documentary, those guys must have been inundated with calls and leads. So even for them to kind of blow off Yonkers, I can get it. I'm not even blaming them.
Right.
Because there might have been leads coming in all over the time. I've seen it because I've worked cases.
Right.
And that's why you need so many guys, because you can get burned out and you have to chase down these leads, and a lot of them lead to nothing. People want to see what they want to see, but they all have to be followed up. I get that. You know what I mean? I get that. But I know that my dad and Eddie Oakley, they took it serious and they worked the case.
I'm really glad that we could just honor your dad by doing this video.
So am I. So am I.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my regret is I never really in depth, especially after I read the Terry book. I was intrigued by it, obviously, because, again, it's my neighborhood. It was a case my dad worked on,
right,
and everything else. But I just, and I knew one to my part, and all this stuff. But I never did. I don't know why I did. I never did. I think that maybe my father got an award. I mean, there was a Joe Serlak, apparently did a lot of work on the case too. Joe passed away. He's a great detective. I worked with Joe. So there were guys, Tommy Chamberlain and Peanut Davallo, God bless them. I worked with both of those guys. It's funny because they worked at my dad's time. There was a continuation, so I knew these men,
right.
And they were good guys. If they weren't, I tell you, but they were, and they were very proud of that, you know. And it shows that, and Wogaki and Rogers, same thing. These guys are great reps, man. They were great cops. They knew their sectors. They knew their bad guys. And I think Chris was I mean, as a young cop, he treated every cop great. And he was still very active. He was in K-9. He was still rolling around. You know, he was about to
Really?
retire, and he was still coming to
We're
the
actually
job.
trying to find him because he knows about also. Something that we're dealing with. I kind of forgot. It's not important. So, Mike, are there any more reports here?
I can make you copies.
But that's it
Yeah.
for the video. Well, I'm basically speechless, Neo. I don't know about you.
The Neptune thing, right? It's bugged out, right?
That Neptune thing is blowing me the F away. This whole
And like
thing
I
with
told
the...
you, nuts find it. The thing that is hard, maybe it's because a cop, I take it for granted. But also being a street guy, you say, well, God, how did you become friends with him? I don't know how things work in the world. But certain people, if you're into certain things, whether, like I told you, whether it's going to conventions
Right.
or going to a bar where you know, hey, you know, these are my kind of people hang out there. You know what I mean? Like you, he hangs out at Gianna's. I think it's funny, you two. It's funny. Not that you hang out there, but which is cool. It shows that you have respect for each other and you don't care about what kind of music he's into, what you look like.
That's way gone.
But at the same time, it's weird how you go to places where you will find like-minded people. It's not that extraordinary when you really think about it. That if you go to a place like an Italian restaurant, or a place like that, you're going to meet people who like the same movies you do, like the same music you like, clothing, cars. That's not unusual. And it's the same thing with nuts. They find each other. There's almost like an appeal to it. And the thing about Untermeyer, me and Matri were talking about this, even though that was literally in my backyard, when I was a kid, that place was beautiful. I'm talking about 9, 10 years old.
Uh-huh.
My mother's from Ireland. They used to have Irish festivals up there. It was gorgeous. Rows of roses and all the fountains, sparkling water. You wouldn't find a freaking candy wrapper on that place.
Uh-huh.
And then in the 70s, whatever happened, it went derelict. And a lot of these derelicts found there. And the weird thing is, we would go there once in a blue moon, right, to take a picture or hang out. But it was a place that drew kind of the acid heads.
Right.
Not necessarily like satanic. They were kind of the kids that couldn't hang out like where we grew up on Lake Avenue. I couldn't hang out at 242nd Street. Or like the North End when I was a kid. There was these there were these different areas, the Piera Park. Like if you were an acid freak, you were probably going to get handled over there, or you would be felt unwelcome. You understand?
Right.
So there are these places that would draw the. And I knew people hung out who were cool. They just like to smoke pot and listen to Grateful Dead.
Yeah.
They were nothing more than anything like that. But they weren't people it drew a certain type of people, a lot of acid heads, because you could see why you would do acid and go there. Because it's kind of gothic and mysterious
yep.
and weird. It wasn't just evil. Like I'm sure a lot of people dropped acid and go, isn't this so wonderful? Right? The mosaics and all that. Like you can understand why people would do that. And the hippie hold flowers. Guys like us, not looking back now when you're a kid, you're just a macho idiot. But like you couldn't walk around your friends and go, oh, look at those beautiful flowers.
Right.
Said, what are you, a fucking asshole?
So real quick before we close this out, and we don't want to get into a whole saga here, but what's your general take on Son of Sam? If you were to say in a nutshell, briefly describing what as a veteran detective, what do you think occurred in Son of Sam vis-a-vis Berkowitz and...
I think Berkowitz... because I know, and I've been bummed out, and I've tried to explain it, and it's been issues in courts with eyewitness testimony, with sketches. That's why not a lot of like veteran cops put a lot of duty into it, and they used actually a lot of defense attorneys love it because a lot of times the sketch doesn't even look like the guy.
Right.
So it's something that we don't put a lot of credence into. I'm going to tell you something right now. If they had the profiling that they have now, they would have tracked the arsons and stuff and really focused on this guy. Now that they know it, now that the FBI and serial killers have been examined, it always does start out usually with vandalism,
right?
Fires, also the solitary Wayne B. Williams, these people who work in kind of buffy jobs. What is their background? If that came up like now in the FBI, if they did a profile, they would say, this guy has some ties to law enforcement.
Right.
Or scanners. He might be a police buff. That might have sent off a radar about this guy.
Right.
They go in for armed security. They go to gun shows.
Right.
As a kid, they couldn't get pegged down for it, but they're always around an incident. Like my buddy, one time, an old veteran cop says, they go, we can never prove that he broke all the windows, but every time we saw him, he was juggling rocks.
Right.
You understand?
Yeah.
You didn't see him throw the fucking rock through the window, but every time we saw him, he was juggling rocks.
Yeah.
So, but my take on it, and my old man, I'll tell you this right now, I never heard the name Michael Carr, but he thinks that John Carr was involved.
He thought
my dad did.
He named John Carr.
My dad think he says those Carr's kids. And again, that's my regret that I never followed up on it. Like, what made you believe that? Because my father wouldn't have just said that just on the sketches. He wouldn't.
Right.
He would not have said that just on the sketches. Because no detective would.
And he dealt directly with Sam.
Right. He dealt with the family.
So he had probably a better feel.
Carr was in the radio room. I don't know. I don't know if he ever had any personal dealings with her in particular. That was always a weird thing because the weird thing about Yonkers, especially on the west side, and it's a good thing and a weird thing. Everybody knows somebody,
Right.
And there's all these like tentacles, so you could see how like a conspiracy could go so many different ways. Yeah, but I saw him talking to so and so, and
right.
And but again, that's not a strictly Yonkers thing. I'm sure every community has that to a certain extent.
Right.
But yeah, I believe my own man. And like what I told you, the thing is, like the East Bronx things, like if he just did all the things in East Bronx, you just say, that was that nut. That was him. It was him and nobody else. And what, like, at the end of the day, this case is going to be very hard to tie in John Carr because he's dead.
Right.
And number two, anybody who had any kind of dealings with him, again, you have to be able to put him on the set.
Right.
And even if Berkowitz says it tomorrow that John Carr did it, there's no court of law that could convict him.
Right.
Because it's a co-conspirator.
Right. And he's dead.
So it'd be almost impossible. If the guy was alive today, it would be almost impossible without a confession or DNA to get a conviction on this guy. I understand the fascination by it. I'm fascinated by it, even as a detective, and the story in a lot of ways doesn't make sense. But a lot of times these things don't make sense.
Right.
We kind of either give a guy too much credit, and I think the thing, and you hit on it great, and that's why I say you have a mind for it, in that you don't give anybody too much credit, yet you don't underestimate them either. I think a lot of people bought into the Berkowitz just nut things. He's cunning. He had to be cunning just to get away from that. He just didn't just go park the car and boom. He staked out those areas to know Lover's Lanes. If he's from the Bronx, how the fuck would he know where Lover's Lane is in Brooklyn? This is Brooklyn.
Right.
This isn't Hastings.
Right. Right.
Where there may be only one or two lovers. Like, this is Brooklyn. Brooklyn is a state in its own.
Right.
The fact that you would know where girls and boys congregate, every kid in that neighborhood, those victims and their friends, they knew that that's where to go to make out, just like we knew where to go to make out with our girlfriends.
Right.
How does a guy from the East Bronx, a Yonkers, know that set?
Right.
Or the one in Queens. Like I said, the one over by the Hutch in the East Bronx.
That's his neighborhood.
He knows that hood.
Yeah.
He knows what it. And the other ones with the two girls. I think that was the dip in the toe. Once he did that, it was over.
Yeah.
That was the peak of the roller coaster. Once he had the balls, all these little small crimes leading up to it, probably the vandalism, the thing like you said about the shooting. There's no doubt in my mind that he was doing things like that.
Right. And he was escalating on Wicker Street too.
Escalating it.
Escalating.
And these things, again, if you really dig into it, I don't want to contradict anybody. Like you said, we see the best and the worst in what we want to see a lot of times, especially when it's intimacy, whether it be family or friends.
Right. Right.
But there's no way. Yes, I think the drugs with that guy from Jersey, but the guy who grew up in Co-op City, that guy, he's sharp and he knows what he's talking about. But we never really know our own friends, even our neighbors. You never know what this kid do. And the environments that we have communality with, you could put on whatever face you can, but we never truly know anybody. And that's not
true.
to be paranoid, but it's just true. It's just true because you're not going to again, when we were kids, things are different now. You guys aren't that much younger than me. Now we can be open up. Even our kids are a lot more open in their communication. You got to remember that at that time, people were in the closet. Even to be gay was like, people couldn't come out and say gay. You couldn't it was so weird. People didn't talk about family situations. Oh, no, they were great mother and father. They were, you don't know. We don't never know what goes on behind closed doors.
Right.
People come out, you wouldn't know. I remember when I was a kid, when my parents were fighting, you think that I went out and told my friends, I can't take it in my house. They're fighting all the time. I would go out, either shoot baskets or run or throw fucking rocks at a sign just to blow it off. But I never said, hey, can I talk with you about something?
Yeah.
It was wrong because we should have been able to do it. And I think a lot of people became alcoholics and drug addicts because they had to suppress all that stuff.
So listen, Mike, this was amazing, man, and I have a feeling that we're going to be talking more as the months ensue. So I just want to say thank you. This blew my mind. I'm totally blown away today, once again, and I just want to say thank you so much, Mike. And I'm sure the audience is going to love this, and hopefully we'll meet again soon.
You guys are diligent and you're doing the right thing. I thought maybe you'd be wackadoos, but you're not.
Thanks. All right. Whoops. All right, guys, we'll just pan out on that
Good stuff,
today.
Mike.
Thanks.